Hey, girlfriend, this is Jan James. Welcome to the Hope After Breast Cancer podcast. We've got a mini episode for you today, so let's get started.
So as part of our educational series, I think it would be very helpful if we talk about the issue of depression. There's a lot of different ways to look at depression because we can have sadness. We can be sad that we have cancer, but we can also be physiologically depressed, which is different than an emotion. So when we are looking at depression and a clinical depressed state, which oftentimes happens with anyone that has a traumatic incident or has physiological changes that are dramatic, a depression of the brain can occur. And what's very helpful, what I've explained to people, what has helped me tremendously, is to understand that there's a difference between your mind and your brain. Your mind uses your brain, but we know the heart and the gut also have a mind. And so we know that we inhabit our body and that our brain is an organ like many other organs in our body. And so that organ can become compromised the same way that my lungs can or my heart can. And so when we think about what happens to the brain when it is chronically depressed, if you can think about the carpet, a shag carpet that has had a very heavy bookcase sitting on it for 10 years, you may never get the nap to rise. So with clinical depression, when there's different types of medications, when there's this idea that you may lose your life, when there is pain, when there is sickness, when there is chronicity of effect on the body, that can cause the brain to feel like heavy furniture is sitting on your brain. And so emotionally, it can create sadness and can create overwhelm and loss of hope and all those types of emotions that come when our brain can't think good thoughts because it's too overwhelmed. So one of the things that we really practice when it comes to any type of disease model is recognizing that I am not my brain. My brain is an organ. So myself, we don't see brains, floating to heaven if you're, of a faith. When we think about people floating up to heaven, we don't see their brains going. So we know that our brains die with our body. So this is why it's so important for us to recognize that the way that I think has something to do with how my brain is functioning. If my brain is tired, then it will begin to think slowly. It will begin to think more negatively. It will be like gravity, that the more tired my brain becomes, the more dark its thinking becomes. The happier I am, or the better I feel, the more energy my brain has. It's like New York City lit up. So it's important to recognize that any type of a chronic and possibly deadly disease is diagnosed. It's very depressing to the brain because it means it's a big battle that is now having to take on. And it can get overwhelmed and exhausted and tired. And it doesn't want to think positively because it's too tired. And it doesn't want to think positively because it's too let down and too afraid and too scared and too mad. So it's imperative that we say, the better we think, and not stupid, silly Pollyanna thinking, but thinking things like, what is something that is happening today that is positive? Well, my friend called me and told me they loved me. I'm going to think on that. And what we have seen in brain scans is in less than 1/10 of a positive thought, you get more neurons. And it lights up. And so when we can change some of the chemistry of the brain simply by the way we think. And there's a great book called Words Can Change Your Brain, and How God Changes Your Brain. That when people think on religious thoughts, their brains strengthen every single time. When they think on faith-based types of things. When people think on positive experiences that they have had. Or a positive thought. And I'm not talking about stupid positive thoughts. I'm talking about an actual positive thought like, I'm still here today and I have a doctor that really cares about me. They just called me and checked on me. Wow, somebody loves me. Those things help the brain strengthen itself so that it fights this disease much better and helps the rest of your organs function on a higher level. So it's very important when we are thinking about the way we think and the words we choose to think on.
Girlfriend, thank you so much for listening to our mini episode. Until next week, this is Jan James, encouraging you to remember there is hope after breast cancer. See you next time.